You found the Stealth Podcast. Tonight, we'll travel through dark and lonely stories. Where in the world are you watching from? What time is it there? Subscribe and leave your like to support us. Let's begin. My name is Marcus Reeves. I'm 32 years old, and I've been living the van life for almost 2 years now. Originally from Seattle, I left my soul-crushing marketing job behind to pursue photography and freedom on the road. My converted Sprinter van isn't much, but it's home. Solar panels on the roof, a cozy bed in the back, and enough space for my camera equipment. After spending weeks capturing the Oregon coastline, I decided to head to Portland for a few days to meet up with some fellow nomads and sell a few prints at a weekend market. I arrived in Portland on a dreary Tuesday afternoon, the kind where the sky can't decide if it wants to rain or just threaten you with it all day. The industrial district seemed like a decent place to park for a night or two. Quiet, plenty of other vehicles around, and close enough to downtown without being obvious. I found a spot between a warehouse and an abandoned-looking building, tucked away just enough to feel safe but not suspicious. A few other vans were scattered around the area, which was always a good sign in this lifestyle. After getting settled, I headed out to a coffee shop I'd heard about from a travel blog. The Grounded Bean was everything the hipster reviews promised. Exposed brick, plants hanging from the ceiling, and baristas with more tattoos than visible skin. That's where I met Eliza, a barista with kind eyes and an interest in photography. We chatted while she made my pour over, and she mentioned a local photographer's meetup happening that evening at a gallery in the Pearl District. The meetup was packed with Portland's artsy crowd, all black-rimmed glasses and earnest conversations about exposure and composition. I felt a bit out of place with my road-worn appearance, but my portfolio earned me some respect. A tall, well-dressed man named Victor Crane seemed particularly interested in my work. He had piercing blue eyes that never quite matched his smile, and he mentioned owning several galleries across the Pacific Northwest. We exchanged numbers, and he insisted on grabbing drinks to discuss potentially featuring my work. Back at my van that night, I felt a strange energy I couldn't quite place. The industrial area that had seemed perfectly safe in the afternoon now felt eerily quiet. The other vans I'd noticed earlier were gone, leaving me alone in this concrete jungle. I double-checked my locks before settling in for the night, scrolling through the photos I'd taken that day. A notification popped up, a text from Victor suggesting we meet tomorrow at an exclusive gallery space he owned in a renovated warehouse, just a few blocks from where I was parked. Morning came with a persistent fog that clung to the streets and muffled the distant sounds of the city. I spent a few hours editing photos before heading out to grab breakfast at a nearby food cart pod. The coffee was strong, and the breakfast burrito hit the spot, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Twice I turned around suddenly, catching glimpses of someone ducking behind corners or merging into crowds. Just Portland's famous weirdness, I told myself, though the unsettling feeling lingered. I decided to scout out Victor's gallery before our meeting, just to get a sense of the place. The address led me to a massive brick building with blacked-out windows and no signage except for a small plaque reading Crane Visuals, Private Collection. It stood isolated from other businesses, surrounded by empty parking lots and chain-link fences. Something about it felt off, but I chalked it up to artistic eccentricity. Victor had seemed well-connected at the meetup, and this could be my big break. As evening approached, I cleaned up as best I could in my van's tiny bathroom, changed into my least wrinkled button-up, and grabbed my portfolio. The streets were oddly empty as I walked the few blocks to the gallery. A light rain had started, creating halos around the sparse streetlights. My phone buzzed with a text from Victor. Use the side entrance. Looking forward to seeing more of your perspective. Something about the wording made my skin crawl, but opportunities like this didn't come along often in my nomadic lifestyle. What I didn't know as I approached that unmarked side door was that Victor Crane had been watching me since before the meetup. He hadn't stumbled upon me by chance. He'd been tracking van dwellers throughout the Pacific Northwest for months, and his interest had nothing to do with my photography. The gallery's side entrance was tucked away in a narrow alley, illuminated only by a single flickering light above a steel door. I knocked twice, portfolio clutched tightly under my arm. The door creaked open, revealing Victor's tall silhouette against the dim light inside. "Marcus, right on time," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the cavernous space. The gallery was nothing like I'd expected. No art on the walls, just concrete floors, exposed pipes, and a few scattered work lights creating islands of brightness in the darkness. Victor led me through the space, explaining how he was preparing for an installation and wanted photographers who could capture authentic human experiences. Something felt off about the whole setup, but I desperately needed the money a gallery feature could bring. My van's transmission had been making concerning noises, and winter was approaching fast. I've selected a few pieces I'd like to discuss, I said, opening my portfolio on a makeshift table of plywood on sawhorses. Victor barely glanced at them before asking about my living situation. The van life must provide unique perspectives, he said, circling around me like a shark. Where are you parked right now? The question sent a chill down my spine that I couldn't quite explain. I gave a vague answer about being around the industrial district, but Victor pressed for specifics. I asked because I own several properties in that area. Wouldn't want you getting hassled by security. His smile didn't reach those ice blue eyes. I made a mental note to find a new parking spot tonight. As Victor flipped through my portfolio, I noticed a wall of photographs partially concealed behind a plastic tarp. Curiosity got the better of me while he stepped away to take a call, and I peeled back the edge of the covering. What I saw made my blood run cold. Dozens of photos of vans and RVs, clearly taken without the owner's knowledge. Some showed people entering or exiting their vehicles, completely unaware they were being photographed. One van looked disturbingly familiar. It was parked exactly where I had been last night. Victor returned suddenly, his hand clamping down on my shoulder with surprising strength. "Those aren't ready for viewing," he said, his voice taking on an edge I hadn't heard before. He smoothly transitioned back to discussing my work, offering me a surprisingly large sum for exclusive rights to several of my landscape photos. The money would solve my immediate problems, but every instinct told me to get out of there. I made excuses about needing to consider his offer, backing toward the door as politely as possible. Outside, the rain had intensified, drumming against the pavement as I hurried back toward my van. I pulled out my phone to check the location I'd sent to a photographer friend earlier that day, a stupid mistake that now filled me with dread. Had Victor somehow seen that? Halfway back, I ducked into a late-night coffee shop to collect my thoughts and warm up. That's when I noticed the black SUV parked across the street, its windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. It hadn't been there when I entered the gallery. I decided then and there to move my van immediately. Using the coffee shop's Wi-Fi, I found a Walmart on the outskirts of Portland where overnight parking was tolerated. It would mean driving in the rain at night, but staying put no longer felt like an option. As I paid for my coffee, the barista, a different one from the Grounded Bean, slid me a napkin with my change. Written on it was a hasty warning. "The man watching you isn't police. Be careful." When I looked up questioningly, the barista was already helping another customer, deliberately avoiding my gaze. My hands trembled as I started my van's engine, rain hammering against the roof. The industrial district streets were slick and empty, sodium lights creating orange pools on the wet asphalt. In my rearview mirror, headlights appeared, high and wide set, like those of an SUV. They maintained a consistent distance as I turned onto the main road, neither falling behind nor getting closer. I took a random turn, then another. The headlights followed. My heart pounded against my ribs as I realized with growing horror that I was being pursued through the rainy Portland night. Navigation became a desperate game as I tried to lose the vehicle while heading toward busier streets where there might be witnesses. The SUV stayed with me through every turn, every acceleration, every attempt to break free. I grabbed my phone to call 911, but hesitated. What would I tell them? That someone was following me? That a strange art dealer had photos of vans? They'd asked for my address, and I didn't have one. By the time they took me seriously, it might be too late. The decision to handle this alone might have been my first deadly mistake. I finally managed to lose the SUV by cutting through a mall parking garage and exiting on the opposite side. My relief was short-lived. However, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, "Nice driving. But I know Portland better than you do, Marcus." My stomach dropped. Whoever was following me not only knew my name, but had my phone number. The message was followed by a photo of my van taken that very morning, from an angle that suggested the photographer had been standing right next to it while I was sleeping inside. Panic surged through me as I pulled into a crowded gas station, desperate for the safety of other people. My hands shook as I pumped gas, scanning every vehicle that entered the lot. I went inside to pay and buy time, pacing the aisles of overpriced snacks while trying to piece together what was happening. The clerk, a bored-looking teenager, barely glanced up from his phone. I was alone in this. When I finally gathered the courage to return to my van, there was a business card tucked under my windshield wiper, Crane Visuals, with Victor's number scrawled on the back alongside the words, "We should finish our conversation." Rain continued to pour as I drove aimlessly, too afraid to stop anywhere. Every set of headlights in my mirror sent my heart racing. I needed help, but who could I turn to in a city where I knew almost no one? I remembered Eliza from the coffee shop. She'd seemed genuinely friendly, and the Grounded Bean was open late. I navigated there, circling the block twice to ensure I wasn't followed before parking directly in front of the large windows where I could be seen from inside. The cafe was nearly empty this late, just Eliza and another barista cleaning up for closing. When she saw my face, Eliza immediately knew something was wrong. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, sliding a mug of tea across the counter. Words tumbled out of me. The gallery, the photos, the pursuit, while Eliza listened with growing concern. When I mentioned Victor Crane, her expression changed to one of unmistakable fear. "You need to leave Portland," she whispered. "Now, Victor isn't just some art dealer. There have been 3 Vanlifers who disappeared after meeting with him in the last year." My blood turned to ice as Eliza explained in hushed tones that her brother had been living in a converted bus before vanishing 6 months ago. His last text to her mentioned meeting a gallery owner named Crane who was interested in his travel photography. The police had investigated but found nothing conclusive. They basically said he probably just moved on without telling anyone. "That's what they think of people who live on the road," she said bitterly. But my brother wouldn't just disappear. He had plans to meet me that weekend. As closing time approached, the other barista locked the front door and turned the sign to closed. Eliza offered to let me crash on her couch, but I declined. I didn't want to put her in danger. Instead, she marked some safe spots on my map where other van dwellers congregated in numbers. "Stay where there are witnesses," she advised. As I stood to leave through the back door, the cafe's lights suddenly went out. "That's weird," the other barista said. The power was fine all day. A beam of light swept across the darkened windows from outside, someone moving with a flashlight. Terror gripped me as Eliza pulled me down behind the counter. "The circuit breaker must have been tampered with," she whispered. We heard the rattle of someone trying the locked front door, then footsteps circling toward the back. Eliza pointed to a storage room. "There's a fire exit," she breathed. "Go. I'll say you left hours ago." I wanted to protest, to not leave her facing whatever was coming, but she pushed me toward the room with surprising strength. "Go? I've called the police already." The storage room was pitch black, forcing me to use my phone's flashlight to find the exit. Behind me, I heard the back door of the cafe being forced open, followed by heavy footsteps and a man's voice. Victor's voice, asking Eliza questions in a tone that sent shivers down my spine. The fire exit had an alarm bar, which meant opening it would alert whoever was in the cafe to my location. My fingers trembled as I texted my location to both my sister in Seattle and a Vanlife forum where people looked out for each other. If something happened to me tonight, there would at least be a digital trail. The sound of breaking glass and Eliza's frightened protests spurred me into action. I pushed the bar and the alarm wailed as I burst into the alley behind the cafe. Rain immediately soaked through my jacket as I sprinted toward where I'd parked my van, fishing for my keys. Behind me, I heard a door slam open and running footsteps. I didn't look back, focusing only on reaching my vehicle, my home, my escape. As I fumbled with the key fob, a voice called out, "Marcus, you don't understand what you've stumbled into." It wasn't Victor's voice this time, but someone else's, someone who knew my name and had been waiting for me. I threw myself into the driver's seat, locking the doors just as a figure appeared in my headlights. Not Victor, but a broad-shouldered man in a dark raincoat. He raised his hands to show they were empty, but I wasn't taking chances. I revved the engine and peeled away from the curb, tires splashing through puddles as I accelerated down the street. In my rearview mirror, I saw him speaking urgently into a phone. Moments later, the now familiar black SUV rounded the corner behind me, high beams blinding as it gave chase. Portland's downtown streets became a maze of terror as I weaved through late-night traffic, running yellow lights, and making sudden turns. The SUV stayed with me, sometimes joined by a second vehicle, a dark sedan that tried to flank me at intersections. I was being hunted by multiple people. My van, usually my sanctuary, felt like a trap on wheels. Its bulk made quick maneuvers difficult, and the rain-slicked roads didn't help. A desperate plan formed in my mind. I needed to ditch the van temporarily and disappear on foot where vehicles couldn't follow. I cut through a narrow alley between brick buildings, scraping my van's side, but gaining precious seconds. Forest Park lay ahead, with its network of hiking trails and dense woods. If I could reach it, I might lose them in the trees. But first, I needed to create confusion. I dialed 911 as I drove, reporting a break-in at the Grounded Bean and giving a description of Victor before dropping my phone out the window. They tracked the signal there while I escaped in another direction. The loss of my phone was devastating, but necessary. I'd seen enough movies to know they could track it. The rain became a blessing as I parked haphazardly near a trailhead, grabbing only my wallet, keys, and a flashlight before plunging into the dark woods. The muddy path sucked at my shoes as I moved as quickly as I dared, using the flashlight sparingly to avoid giving away my position. Behind me, car doors slammed and voices called out. Beams of light swept through the trees as my pursuers organized a search. I pushed deeper into the forest, panic giving me energy I didn't know I possessed. Hours passed in a nightmare of mud, rain, and fear. I lost track of direction, focusing only on moving away from the voices and lights that sometimes seemed to gain on me, other times fade into the distance. The forest that had seemed like salvation became a dark prison of confusion. Every snapping twig sent my heart into my throat. My clothes were soaked through, my body trembling from cold and adrenaline. Dawn was still hours away, and I wasn't sure I could evade them that long. Eventually, I found myself at the edge of a ravine, too steep to descend safely in the dark. I had to double back, risking running into my pursuers. As I turned, a beam of light caught me directly in the face, momentarily blinding me. "He's here," a voice shouted, and multiple lights converged on my position. I ran blindly, branches whipping my face, feet slipping on the mud. A root caught my ankle and I went down hard, tumbling down a slope and coming to rest against a fallen tree. Pain shot through my leg, not broken, but definitely sprained. Lights and voices approached from above as I dragged myself beneath the fallen tree, pressing my body into the mud and rotting leaves. Footsteps passed within feet of my hiding place. "Spread out," commanded a voice I recognized as Victor's. "He can't have gone far with that fall." "Marcus," he called out, his voice taking on a false concern. "You're injured. Let us help you." "This is all a misunderstanding." I bit my lip to keep from making a sound, even as small creatures scurried across my outstretched hands in the decaying underbrush. The search continued for what felt like hours, eventually moving away from my position. When I could no longer hear voices or see lights, I crawled from my hiding place, testing my injured ankle. It would bear weight, but each step sent pain shooting up my leg. I oriented myself using the faint glow of the city visible through the trees and began limping toward what I hoped was the eastern edge of the park. If I could reach the residential areas beyond, I might find help, or at least witnesses that would make Victor and his accomplices hesitate. My progress was agonizingly slow. Twice I had to freeze and hide again as searchers passed nearby. The cold had seeped into my bones, making it harder to think clearly. I found myself stumbling, catching myself against trees to remain upright. Hypothermia was becoming a real concern. As the first hints of dawn lightened the eastern sky, I finally emerged from the tree line onto a residential street lined with craftsman-style homes. Porch lights glowed welcomingly, but which door could I knock on? Who would believe my wild story about being hunted through the night? And more importantly, who might be connected to Victor in this city he claimed to know so well? Dawn painted the sky in shades of gray as I limped down the quiet street, trying to look less desperate than I felt. A newspaper delivery person gave me a wide berth. I must have looked like a homeless man after my night in the forest. I needed to find a police station, but had no phone and no idea where the nearest one might be. My salvation appeared in the form of a city bus lumbering up the street. I flagged it down with my last reserves of energy, paid the fare with muddy hands, and collapsed into his seat, ignoring the driver's concerned glance. The warmth of the bus was both blessing and curse. It helped with the hypothermia, but made me acutely aware of how much my body hurt. Each stop brought us closer to downtown, where I hoped to find a police station. My eyelids grew heavy as exhaustion caught up with me. I fought to stay awake, knowing sleep would leave me vulnerable, but eventually lost the battle. I dreamed of running through endless woods while Victor's voice echoed all around me, describing my terror as if narrating a photograph. Notice the genuine fear in the subject's eyes. You can't fake that kind of authenticity. I jerked awake as the bus braked sharply. We were downtown, the streets now alive with morning commuters. I thanked the driver and stepped out into a world that seemed impossibly normal after my night of terror. Coffee shops were opening. People hurried past with steaming cups and downcast eyes focused on their phones. No one looked twice at the mud-covered man with the limp. I spotted a police station 2 blocks away and made my way there, rehearsing my story in my head, trying to make it sound less unhinged. The officer at the front desk looked skeptical as I described the events of the past 24 hours. "So this gallery owner is hunting van dwellers? For what purpose?" he asked, not bothering to hide his disbelief. I mentioned Eliza and her missing brother, which seemed to catch his attention. He made a call, and soon I was sitting in an interview room with a detective who looked tired before I even started talking. But as I described Victor and showed the detective the business card I'd found on my windshield, his expression changed. "Wait here," he said, leaving me alone for nearly an hour. When he returned, another detective was with him, and they both wore grave expressions. "Mr. Reeves, we've been investigating a series of disappearances involving people living in vehicles," the new detective explained. "Until now, we've had very little to go on." They showed me photos of 3 people, all young, all described as living in vans or RVs, all last seen in Portland before vanishing. One was Eliza's brother, his resemblance to her unmistakable. "We need you to tell us everything again, from the beginning," they said, placing a recorder on the table. Hours later, I sat in the police station's break room, drinking terrible coffee and waiting for news about Eliza. Officers had been dispatched to the grounded Bean and to the warehouse gallery, but I hadn't heard any updates. My van was still parked near Forest Park, probably being watched by Victor's people. I felt homeless in a more profound way than ever before, not just without a permanent address, but without even the temporary sanctuary my van had provided. A female officer approached with a phone. "Your sister," she said. We contacted her. Relief washed over me as I heard my sister's voice, promising to drive down from Seattle immediately. The detective returned while I was still on the call, motioning for me to wrap it up. His expression told me the news wasn't good before he even spoke. "We found the grounded Bean in disarray, signs of a struggle," he said quietly. "No sign of the barista you mentioned. The warehouse was empty, recently cleared out, by the look of it. Professional job." My heart sank as I realized Eliza had likely been taken because she'd helped me. The knowledge sat like a stone in my stomach. Days passed in a blur of police statements, visits to the hospital for my ankle, and sleepless nights on my sister's couch. My van was recovered, but I couldn't bring myself to sleep in it anymore. Local news ran stories about the Portland van disappearances, with my name carefully kept out of the reporting. Police found evidence in the warehouse, specialized photography equipment, darkroom chemicals, and most disturbing of all, a hidden room with walls covered in photographs. They wouldn't tell me what was in those photos, but their expressions when discussing them told me enough. 1 week after that terrible night, the detective called me with news. They'd tracked Victor's vehicle crossing into Washington state, heading toward the Olympic Peninsula's remote forests. A multi-state manhunt was underway. "We'll find him," the detective promised, but I heard the uncertainty in his voice. The following day, I received a package at my sister's address. No return address, just my name written in elegant script I recognized from Victor's business card. Inside was a single photograph, me, asleep in my van, taken through the window on that first night in Portland. On the back, a handwritten note. "The fear in your eyes made for my best work yet. Until we meet again." The police added the photograph to their evidence, increased patrols past my sister's house, and suggested I leave the state entirely. 2 days later, I was on a plane to my parents' home in Arizona, leaving the van life behind. Sometimes at night, I still wake up convinced I hear someone outside my window, taking photographs of me while I sleep. I check the news obsessively for updates on the case. 3 months later, they found Eliza's body in a shallow grave on Forest Service land. Of Victor and the others who disappeared, including Eliza's brother, there remains no trace. What haunts me most isn't just what happened, but what I uncovered afterward. In researching similar cases across the country, I discovered dozens of missing van dwellers over the past decade. People whose disappearances were dismissed because they lived off the grid anyway. People with no fixed address, whose absence might not be noticed for weeks or months. People like me, who thought they were living freely but were actually perfect targets. Victor Crane wasn't his real name, of course. Police believe he's operated under at least 5 identities in 3 states. And somewhere out there, he's still hunting, still watching, still waiting for the perfect shot. I'm Ethan Carter, 28 years old, and I live in Seattle, Washington. Been up there my whole life, dodging the rain and sipping overpriced coffee. A couple years back, I ditched my soul-crushing desk job, sold most of my junk, and bought a beat-up Ford Econoline. Converted it myself, bed in the back, tiny kitchen, solar panels on the roof. It's my ticket to freedom, my little rolling sanctuary. I've been living the van life dream ever since, chasing open roads and quiet spots to crash for the night. Most folks think it's all Instagram sunsets and cozy vibes, but man, they don't know the half of it. Last week, I decided to head south to Portland. Needed a change of scenery, maybe hit up some breweries, scope out the weirdness everyone raves about. I'd heard about this spot off the beaten path, near Forest Park, tucked away on a gravel pullout. Sounded perfect for a stealth camp. I rolled into town around dusk, the sky all bruised with purple clouds, and found the place easy enough. Trees loomed tall, swallowing the last of the light. It was quiet, real quiet, just the hum of my engine cutting off as I parked. I'm not some rookie at this. I've got my routine down. Check the surroundings, lock the doors, pull the blackout curtains tight. That night, I cooked some ramen on my little stove, cracked a beer, and scrolled through my phone till the signal crapped out. Forest Park's huge, over 5,000 acres, and I was on the edge of it, feeling like I'd scored a hidden gem. I didn't see another soul around, which was fine by me. Solitude's kind of the point, right? My van's not fancy, but it's home. Got a mattress that's seen better days, a couple string lights for ambience, and a stash of canned chili for emergencies. I've parked in sketchy lots before, truck stops, back roads, even a Walmart or two, but this spot felt different. Not creepy, just still, like the world was holding its breath. I brushed it off, figured I was just tired from the drive. Portland's got that artsy, laid-back reputation, so I wasn't expecting trouble. After dinner, I sprawled out on the bed, listening to the wind rustle the trees outside. It's funny how you get used to the little noises, branches scraping, leaves crunching under some critters' feet. I've slept through worse. Back in Seattle, I'd park near the docks sometimes, and the gulls would scream bloody murder at dawn. This was peaceful by comparison. I flicked off the lights, double-checked the locks, and let my eyes adjust to the dark. Thing is, I'm not paranoid. I've got a pocket knife stashed under my pillow, sure, but that's just common sense. Vanlife teaches you to trust your gut, though, and mine was calm that night. I didn't feel watched or anything dumb like that. Just a guy in a van, ready to crash and explore the city come morning. Portland's got those food carts I'd been dying to try, pod thing on Hawthorne maybe. I drifted off pretty quick, the kind of sleep where you don't even dream. Hours must have passed, cause when I jolted awake, it was pitch black. No clue what time it was. My phone was dead, hadn't charged it enough. Something had woken me, though. Not a sound, not yet. Just a feeling heavy in my chest. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, waiting for my brain to catch up. See, I've had nights where raccoons rummage too close, or a storm shakes the van like a tin can. This wasn't that. My heart was thudding, and I couldn't shake it. I reached for my knife, just to hold it, you know? Figured I'd peek out the window, make sure I wasn't losing it. That's when I saw the first hint of something off, a faint glow, way out in the trees, flickering like a dying flashlight. I sat up, squinting through a crack in the curtain. Could have been a hiker, a ranger, hell, even some kids messing around. But it was late. real late, and that light wasn't moving right. Too steady, too deliberate. I told myself I was overreacting, that the horror movies I'd binged last month were screwing with me. Still, I kept watching, hand tight on that knife, wondering what the hell I'd parked next to. That glow out there didn't budge, just hung in the trees like a damn lantern somebody forgot to turn off. I sat there, knife in hand, telling myself it was nothing. Probably some camper too lazy to douse their fire. But my gut wouldn't quit nagging me, and I've learned to listen when it gets like that. I grabbed my flashlight, cheap thing from a gas station, but it works, and cracked the window just enough to shine it out. The beam cut through the dark, hit the trunks of those big pines, and nothing. No tent, no person, just that eerie light winking back at me. I shut the window quick, locked it tighter than necessary. My van's solid, but it's not a fortress. Those flimsy locks wouldn't stop a determined raccoon, let alone whatever was out there. I tried my phone again, hoping for a bar of signal to Google weird lights in Forest Park, but it was still dead. Great. Middle of nowhere, no juice, and me playing detective with a flickering mystery. I could have started the engine and peeled out, but that felt like overkill. Plus, gas ain't cheap. So I waited, figuring it'd fade or move off. It didn't. Minutes dragged into an hour, and I was wide awake, adrenaline buzzing like I'd chugged a Red Bull. I kept peeking out, and that's when I noticed something new. The air felt wrong. Heavy, thick, like it was pressing down on the van. Back in Seattle, I'd camped near Puget Sound once, and a fog rolled in so dense you couldn't see your hand. This was like that, but dry. No mist, just weight. I decided to get proactive. Slipped on my boots, grabbed a hoodie, and rigged up my portable charger to juice my phone. While it hummed to life, I started rationalizing. Maybe it was a park maintenance thing, some sensor or marker I didn't know about. Portland's got all kinds of eco-techy stuff, right? But then my phone buzzed on, and the clock said 3:17 a.m. way too late for anybody legit to be out there tinkering. That's when I heard it. Not footsteps or some cheesy horror movie creak, but a low hum, like a generator, faint, coming from the same direction as the light. My first thought was drone, but it wasn't buzzy enough. More like machinery, steady and deep. I've got buddies who've camped in sketchy spots, heard trains, highways, even bears, but this was different. It wasn't natural, and it was close. Too close. I made a call. Stay put or check it out. Leaving the van at night's a rookie mistake. Every vanlifer knows you don't wander off half-cocked. But sitting there, blind, was driving me nuts. I compromised, rolled down the driver's window an inch, stuck my head out, and listened hard. The hum got clearer, and now I could smell something too. Sharp, chemical, like bleach or paint thinner. Hit me right in the sinuses, made my eyes water. I yanked my head back in, heart pounding. Okay, that wasn't a camper. Nobody's out there bleaching the damn forest at 3 a.m. My mind raced. Meth lab, maybe? I'd heard stories about setups hidden in woods like this, but Portland didn't strike me as the type. Still, I wasn't about to play hero. I fumbled with my keys, thinking I'd just move the van a mile down the road and call it a night. But then the light shifted. Not closer, not farther, just sideways. Like somebody picked it up and walked with it. I froze, watching it glide between the trees, smooth as hell. No bobbing, no stumble, just a steady drift. And the hum, it didn't stop, didn't change. My hands were sweaty on the keys, and I was 2 seconds from turning them when I saw something else. A shape, tall and thin, right where the light had been. I couldn't make it out, too dark, too far, but it wasn't moving like a person should. More like it was waiting, planted there, staring back at me. I'm not a jumpy guy, but that silhouette hit me like a punch. Every instinct screamed to get out, but I couldn't shake the feeling that starting the engine might tip whatever this was over the edge. So I sat there, keys dangling, watching that shape in that damn light, wondering what I'd stumbled into. That shape in the trees didn't move, but I couldn't peel my eyes off it. The light hovered nearby, steady as ever, and that hum drilled into my skull like a dentist's tool. I was gripping the keys so hard my knuckles ached, stuck between flooring it and staying dead still. Then it happened. The shape turned, slow and deliberate, and I swear it was facing me. No face, no details, just a black cutout against the faint glow. My stomach dropped, and I knew this wasn't some tweaker or lost hiker. This was bad. I fumbled with the curtains, yanking them shut, like that'd hide me from whatever was out there. My breath was loud, too loud, and I tried to slow it down, but panic was creeping in fast. I've been in dicey spots before, nearly rolled my van off a cliff in the Cascades once, but this was different. This felt personal, like that thing knew I was here, watching me squirm. The chemical stink was stronger now, seeping through the cracks, burning my throat. I grabbed my phone, finally at 10% battery, and opened the camera. Zoomed in as far as it'd go, aimed it through a slit in the curtain. The screen showed nothing but blur and shadows. Then, bam, a face. Pale, gaunt, with eyes like black pits, staring right into the lens. I dropped the phone, cursing under my breath. It wasn't a trick of the light. That guy was real, and he was close, maybe 20 yards out, just past the gravel. The hum spiked, louder, sharper, and I heard something new, a voice. Low, gravelly, muttering words I couldn't catch. Not English, not anything I knew. It wasn't shouting, just talking, like he was on a phone call with the devil. I snatched my knife off the bed, hands shaking, and crouched low. My van's got no back windows, thank God, but I felt exposed anyway, like he could see through the metal. I peeked again, couldn't help it. He was moving now, toward me. Long strides, head tilted weird, like his neck didn't work right. He carried that light in one hand, swinging it lazy, and something else in the other. A bag, maybe? My brain screamed, run, but where? Into the woods? Fat chance. I slid into the driver's seat, keys ready, when a loud thunk hit the side of the van. Not a rock, not a branch. Too solid, too intentional. He was right outside. I could hear him breathing, raspy, wet, like he'd smoked a pack a day for 50 years. The muttering stopped, replaced by a chuckle, low and nasty. I turned the key, engine sputtering to life, and floored it. Gravel sprayed, tires squealed, but then, bang, something slammed the back doors, hard enough to dent them. I didn't look back, just kept driving, heart hammering. The road twisted through the park, narrow and dark, and I was flying blind, headlights bouncing off trees. That chemical smell clung to me, stuck in my nose, and I realized it wasn't just outside. It was in the van. I glanced at the passenger seat, a smear of something wet, yellowish, glistening on the cushion. He'd been here, touched my stuff. My skin crawled, and I swerved, nearly clipping a pine. I hit the main road, pavement under me at last, and risked a look in the side mirror. He was there, standing in the middle of the lane, light in hand, watching me go. Tall, bony, with that bag dangling like a trophy. The terror hit full force. This wasn't random. He'd marked me, singled me out, and I had no clue why. My phone buzzed, 1% left, and a text popped up from an unknown number. You shouldn't have stopped. I floored it harder, Portland's lights blurring ahead, but that chuckle echoed in my head. Whatever he wanted, he wasn't done. I could feel it in my bones. Something was seriously wrong, and it was coming for me. I tore through Portland's outskirts, pushing the van past 70, engine whining like it might blow. Streetlights flickered overhead, but they didn't make me feel safer, just lit up how alone I was. My hands were slick on the wheel, and that yellow smear on the seat kept catching my eye, stinking like bleach and rot. I didn't know what it was, but it screamed danger, and I wasn't sticking around to find out. I needed a plan, gas, people, anything, but my tank was half empty, and the streets were dead. It was past 4 a.m., and even Portland's 24-hour vibe was asleep. I aimed for downtown, figuring lights and traffic might shake this nightmare. My phone was dark again, battery toast, so number 911, no maps. Just me, the van, and that psycho's text burned into my brain. You shouldn't have stopped. A stoplight ahead turned red, and I slammed the brakes, panting. That's when I heard it, a rumble, low and mean, behind me. I twisted in the seat, and there it was, headlights, big ones, closing fast. A truck, blacked out, no plates I could see. My gut said it was him, and when it didn't slow for the light, I knew. I gunned it, red be damned, tires screeching as I veered left. The truck followed, engine roaring, and I caught a glimpse in the mirror. Same guy, leaning out the window, grinning like a jackal. He had that bag on the seat next to him, and I didn't want to guess what was in it. I took a hard right, clipping a curb, and barreled down a side street. Boxes and trash cans scattered as I plowed through. Sorry, Portland, no time for manners. He was gaining, and my van's no speed demon. I swerved into an alley, narrow as hell, praying he couldn't fit. Metal scraped as I sideswiped the dumpster, but the truck's growl faded for a sec. I punched it, popping out near the Willamette River, bridges glowing in the distance. Thought I'd lost him. Then headlights flared again, right on my tail. He'd found a way. I crossed the Burnside Bridge, weaving through lanes, and spotted a 24-hour gas station. Neon sign buzzing, clerk inside. I skidded in, parked crooked, and bolted for the door. The clerk, some kid with earbuds, barely looked up as I yelled about a psycho chasing me. Truck pulled in behind, slow and smug, and the guy stepped out, tall, greasy hair, eyes locked on me. He didn't rush, just stood there, twirling that damn light. I begged the kid to call the cops, but he shrugged. "Phone's down," he said. "Great." The guy started walking toward the glass doors, and I saw what was in his other hand now. A machete, rusted but sharp. My legs turned to jelly, but I grabbed a tire iron from a display and backed up. He tapped the glass with the blade, grinning wider, and I knew this was life or death. The clerk finally freaked, ducked behind the counter, and I heard sirens. Faint, but coming. The guy froze, head cocked like a dog, then turned and strolled back to his truck. He tossed the bag inside, gave me a mock salute, and peeled out. I collapsed against the wall, tire iron clattering, but those sirens were still blocks away. I wasn't safe, not even close. He'd let me go for now, but that salute said it all. He'd be back. My van sat there, dented and smeared with whatever he'd left, a rolling target. I had to move, disappear, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking, and the city felt like a trap closing in. The cops showed up 10 minutes later, two of them, tired and bored, scribbling my story like it was a drunk's ramble. I told them everything. The light, the guy, the truck, the machete. They poked around my van, sniffed that yellow gunk, and shrugged. Probably paint, they said. No truck in sight, no evidence, but dents and my word. They told me to file a report downtown and drove off, leaving me at that gas station, sun barely peeking over the horizon. I couldn't stay there. Clerk was useless, still glued to his phone, and every engine rumble made me flinch. I climbed into the van, scrubbed that smear with an old rag, gagged the whole time, and hit the road. Figured I'd head north, back to Seattle, put Portland in my rear view for good. My hands steadied a little as I drove, but my mind was a mess, replaying that grin, that salute. I stopped at a rest area off I-5, maybe 30 miles out, to breathe and think. Parked near some truckers, figuring safety in numbers. My van reeked, even with the windows down, and I kept checking the mirrors. Nothing but semis and a gray dawn. I dug through my stuff, found a granola bar, and tried to eat. That's when I saw it. A folded note tucked under my pillow, paper yellowed and damp. My heart sank as I opened it. Scrawled in jagged ink. "Next time, I finish." No name, no number, but I knew. He'd been inside my van, back at the park, maybe when I'd peeked out. I'd locked it, I swore I had, but he'd gotten in anyway. I checked the doors again, found a back latch jimmied loose. My big mistake. I trusted my setup, thought I was untouchable. I trashed the note, started the engine, and hauled ass. Every mile felt like a countdown, and I kept picturing that truck lurking just out of sight. I hit Seattle by noon, parked in a busy lot near Pike Place, and sat there, doors locked, knife in my lap. Thought I'd made it. Crowds, daylight, home turf. Then my phone chirped, plugged into the charger. Another text, same unknown number. "See you soon, Ethan." I stared at it, blood cold. He knew my name. How? I hadn't told the cops, hadn't told anyone in Portland. My van, my safe little world, was a coffin now, marked by some sick bastard who'd turned my freedom into a nightmare. I thought about ditching it, selling it, running, but where? He'd found me once. Days later, I heard from a buddy who'd crashed in Portland that week. Some guy got nabbed near Forest Park, meth cook, machete on him, bag full of bleach-soaked rags. Cops linked him to a missing hiker, body found half dissolved in a barrel. My buddy laughed, said I dodged a bullet. I didn't laugh. That text still sat in my phone, unanswered, and I hadn't slept right since. I sold the van cheap, moved into a friend's basement, but it didn't matter. Last night, I woke up to a faint hum outside, same as that night. Looked out the window, nothing but a flickering light down the street, steady and deliberate. I grabbed a bat and waited, knowing I'd screwed up by thinking I could outrun him. He wasn't done, and neither was my horror story. I'd parked in the wrong place, trusted the wrong locks, and now I'm the one who can't escape. Portland's a memory, but that guy, he's my shadow, and I'm running out of road. I'm Riley Harper, 31 years old, and I call Boise, Idaho home. Grew up there, surrounded by mountains and not much else, until I got restless and traded my apartment for a Dodge Sprinter. Fixed it up nice, with paneling, a fold-out bed, even a little sink for washing dishes. Been living on the road for 2 years now, chasing freedom and dodging 9 to 5S. It's not always glamorous. Think cold showers and flat tires, but it beats cubicle life any day. Last month, I pointed the van toward Portland, Oregon. Heard it's got this quirky charm, bridges, bookstores, and coffee that doesn't suck. I'd been bouncing around the Northwest, and my buddy Jake, who's crashed with me before, said Portland's a must. I rolled in late on a Friday, tires humming over the St. John's Bridge, and aimed for a quiet spot I'd scoped online, near Kelly Point Park, where the Willamette and Columbia rivers meet. Sounded chill, a perfect hideout. I pulled into the lot around 9 p.m., sky dark and heavy with clouds. The park's on the edge of town, industrial vibes mixing with wild riverbanks. A few streetlights buzzed, but it was mostly shadows and silence. I parked facing the water, killed the engine, and took a sec to breathe. My van's my castle. Got a propane heater, a stack of paperbacks, and a ukulele I'm terrible at playing. Felt good to be here. I'm used to solo nights. Cooked some spaghetti on my stove, cracked a window to let the steam out, and sipped a beer while the river lapped outside. Kelly Point's off the radar. Less touristy than Forest Park, more rugged. I'd read about shipyards nearby, big freighters gliding past, but tonight it was dead quiet. Just me and the van, tucked between some scrubby trees. After eating, I locked everything up tight. Habit, you know? I've parked in weirder spots, desert flats, mountain passes, and never had real trouble. Got a baseball bat under the bed, but it's mostly for peace of mind. I scrolled my phone, signal spotty, and watched a grainy video of some guy ranting about Portland's hidden dangers. Laughed it off. Every city's got its ghost stories. I stretched out, the mattress creaking under me, and let the river's murmur pull me under. Been driving all day, so sleep hit fast. Woke up hours later, middle of the night, pitch black, to a jolt. Van rocked, just a little, like something bumped it. I sat up, groggy, figuring it was wind or a stray branch. Happens sometimes, no big deal. But then it came again, harder, deliberate. My pulse kicked up, and I grabbed the bat, ears straining. No wind tonight, no rustling leaves. Just that bump, then silence. I crept to the side window, peeled back the curtain an inch, and squinted into the dark. Nothing but the river glinting under a sliver of moon. Told myself I was imagining things, road fatigue messing with me. Still, I couldn't shake it. Checked the locks again, bat in hand, and sat there, wide awake. That's when I noticed the smell, faint, sour, like spoiled milk. Not from my trash. I'd emptied it in Boise. It was outside, drifting in through the cracked window. I shut it fast, heart thudding, and wondered if I'd picked the wrong spot to crash. I leaned back, bat across my lap, staring at the ceiling. Probably a skunk, I thought, or some funky river muck. But that bump, it wasn't random. Something was out there, and I couldn't shake the feeling it wasn't done with me yet. Portland was supposed to be my break, not a horror show, but here I was, gripping a bat and second-guessing every shadow. I sat there in the dark, bat propped against my knee, trying to convince myself that bump was nothing. Maybe a deer. I thought, Kelly Point's got wildlife, right? But that sour smell stuck around, curling up my nose like bad news. I flipped on my little LED lantern, just enough to see the van's insides, and checked my phone. 2:43 a.m., 1 bar of signal. Not enough to call Jake and freak out, but enough to keep me from feeling totally cut off. The van rocked again, sharper this time, like a shove. I gripped the bat, heart slamming against my ribs. No way that was wind. It felt too targeted, too pissed off. I crawled to the front, peeked through the windshield. The lot was empty, river still as glass, but something glinted near the trees, a quick flash, gone fast. Could have been a critter's eyes, but it didn't move like one. I'm not dumb. I've seen enough scary movies to know go check it out gets you killed. But sitting there, blind, was eating at me. I grabbed my flashlight, the heavy one with a good swing, and cracked the driver's window an inch. Listen hard. Nothing at first, just my own breathing. Then, a scrape. Metal on metal, slow and grating, coming from the back of the van. My blood went cold. I whipped around, shining the light through the curtain gap. Couldn't see much, just the riverbank and some bushes, but that sound kept going, like somebody dragging a nail across my bumper. I've had vandals mess with me before, back in Idaho, kids with spray paint. This wasn't that. This was deliberate, like they wanted me to hear it. I banged on the wall with the bat, yelling, "Hey, knock it off." Silence. For a sec, I thought I'd scared him off. Then the smell got worse, thicker, almost choking. I gagged, pulled my shirt over my nose, and realized it wasn't just outside anymore. It was seeping in, heavy and wet, like something rotting right under me. I checked the floor, nothing. Under the bed, clean. But when I lifted the corner of my mattress, there it was, a wet patch, dark and sticky, stinking like death. I dropped it fast, stomach lurching. How the hell did that get there? I'd slept on that bed hours ago, no problem. My locks were solid. I checked them. But that scrape started up again, louder, closer, and I knew I wasn't alone out here. I slid into the driver's seat, keys shaking in my hand. Option 1, start the van, peel out, find a Walmart lot or something. Option 2, stay put, hope it's just some jerk who'll get bored. I went with 1, coward's way, maybe, but I wasn't dying over pride. The engine coughed to life, and I flicked on the headlights. That's when I saw him, guy in a hoodie, standing maybe 10 feet back, right where my bumper'd been. Tall, hunched, face hidden in shadow. He didn't flinch, just stood there, holding something long and thin, a crowbar maybe. My throat tightened, and I threw the van into gear, tires spinning on gravel. I hit the road out of Kelly Point, glancing in the mirrors. He didn't chase, didn't move, just watched me go, like he was memorizing me. The smell stayed, though, clinging to the air, and that wet spot on my mattress nagged at me. I kept driving, aiming for civilization, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling. Portland's lights glowed ahead, promising safety, but I couldn't shake the feeling I'd pissed someone off. About a mile out, my headlights caught something weird, a streak of that same dark, sticky stuff smeared across the pavement, leading back the way I'd come. Looked fresh, like he'd marked the road after I left. My gut twisted, and I realized this wasn't random. He'd been waiting for me, or someone like me, and I'd just given him a reason to care. I floored it, praying I'd outrun whatever he had planned. I tore out of Kelly Point Park, van rattling like it might fall apart, headlights slicing through the dark. That guy's shape stuck in my brain. Hunched, still, crowbar dangling like he owned the night. My hands were slick on the wheel, and that sour, rotten smell wouldn't leave, even with the windows cracked. I kept checking the mirrors, expecting him to pop up, but the road stayed empty. Still, I wasn't dumb enough to think I'd lost him. I hit North Portland, weaving through sleepy streets, aiming for anything alive. Gas stations, bars, whatever. Found a 7-Eleven glowing like a beacon, pulled in sharp, and parked under the brightest light. My chest was tight, lungs burning, and I couldn't tell if it was panic or that damn stench. I grabbed my phone, 3% battery, barely a signal, and stepped out, bat in hand, eyes darting. The clerk inside was an older guy, balding, munching a hot dog. I barged in, blurted out about some creep at the park, scraping my van, leaving that mess. He squinted at me, shrugged, said, "Sounds like a tweaker. Call the cops if you're scared." Phone was dying, though, and I didn't trust Portland PD to care about a Vanlifer's sob story. I bought a coffee instead, hands shaking as I poured it. Back in the van, I locked up tight and sipped, trying to think. That wet spot on my mattress. I hadn't touched it again, but it was there, mocking me. I lifted the corner with the bat, and the stink hit like a punch. Worse now, meaty and raw. The stain was bigger, spreading, and I saw something glint in it. A shard of glass, tiny, stuck in the fabric. My stomach flipped. This wasn't spilled trash, it was planted. Then my phone buzzed, dead battery be damned, and a text popped up, "You're loud." Unknown number, no name. I dropped the coffee, cup splashing across the floor. He'd heard me yell back at the park, knew I was rattled. How? No way he followed me this fast, not on foot. I scanned the lot. Empty, just a stray cat slinking by. but the hairs on my neck stood up like I was being watched. I started the engine, ready to bolt again, when the lights in the 7-Eleven flickered. Clerk didn't notice, but I did. Then a shadow moved, across the lot, near the dumpster, quick and low. It was him, hoodie up, crowbar tapping his leg like a metronome. He stepped into the light, and I saw his face, pockmarked, eyes sunken, grinning like he'd won something. He pointed the crowbar at me, slow and deliberate. I peeled out, tires squealing, but he didn't chase. Just stood there, grinning wider, like he knew I'd be back. The road blurred as I floored it toward downtown, but that text kept looping in my head. "You're loud." He wasn't just messing with my van. He was inside my head now, and the horror sank in. This guy wasn't random. He'd picked me, and he was playing a game I didn't understand. Halfway across the Fremont Bridge, my headlights caught it again. That dark, sticky streak on the pavement, fresh and glistening. It wasn't roadkill. It was his mark, trailing me like a leash. I swerved, nearly clipping a guardrail, and realized the smell was stronger, the stain on my mattress probably soaking through. Something was seriously wrong, and it wasn't just the van. It was me, stuck in his sights. I hit downtown, weaving through late-night stragglers, but the terror didn't let up. My phone buzzed again, screen black but alive somehow. Closer than you think. I slammed it down, heart pounding, and knew he wasn't done. That grin, that crowbar, that stench. He was coming, and I'd walked right into his trap. I raced through Portland's core, neon signs blurring past. Bars, theaters, all useless at 3 a.m. My van groaned, engine hot, but I didn't care. That guy's grin was burned into me, and those texts, he was tracking me somehow, closer every second. I needed people, lights, anything to shake him, so I aimed for Old Town, where the city never fully sleeps. The bat rolled on the passenger seat, useless against whatever he had planned. The streets narrowed, and I took a hard left, dodging a delivery truck. Mirrors showed nothing, no headlights, no hoodie, but that didn't mean squat. My phone was dead weight now, but his words echoed, closer than you think. I checked the locks, the windows, then saw it, a smudge on the passenger glass, inside, like a fingerprint in that sticky gunk. He'd been in here, not just under the bed. I swerved into a parking garage off Burnside, tires screeching on concrete, and spiraled up to the top level. Open air, city lights below, felt safer than the streets. I killed the engine, grabbed the bat, and crouched low, watching the ramp. The smell was choking now, and I yanked the mattress up. Stain was huge, dripping onto the floor, glass shards glinting like teeth. I gagged, tossed it aside, and saw a folded paper underneath, soaked in that rot. My hands shook as I opened it. "Run all you want, Riley." My name. How the hell did he know my name? I hadn't told a soul in Portland, not even the clerk. I chucked the note, started the van again, when headlights flared below, a pickup, old and rusted, climbing the ramp slow. My gut screamed it was him, and when it hit my level, I saw the crowbar gleaming in his hand, window down. I floored it, then lurching toward the exit, but he cut me off, truck swinging wide. Metal crunched as he clipped my bumper, and I spun, slamming into a pillar. Airbags didn't pop, too old, but my head cracked the wheel, blood trickling warm. He stepped out, boots loud on concrete, and tapped the crowbar against my hood, grinning that sick grin. "Told you," he rasped, voice like gravel. I reversed, scraping the pillar, and gunned it past him, down the ramp. He laughed, loud, unhinged, and I heard the truck roar behind me. Level after level, I spiraled down, mirrors showing him gaining, crowbar dangling out his window. I burst onto the street, nearly T-boning a cab, and raced toward the river, bridges my only shot. He stayed tight, headlights blinding. I hit the Hawthorne Bridge, weaving through lanes, and spotted a cop car ahead, lights off, parked. I laid on the horn, tires smoking as I skidded beside it. The truck slowed, then peeled off down a side street, gone in seconds. I stumbled out, bat in hand, yelling at the cop, some rookie, half asleep. Told him about the guy, the chase, the notes. He radioed it in, but his eyes said he didn't buy it. Blood dripped down my face, and I pointed at the van, dented, stinking, a mess. Cop poked around, found the paper, the stain, and finally looked spooked. Said they'd patrol, but I knew better. Portland's big, and this guy was a ghost. I slumped against the van, pulse racing, knowing I'd escaped by dumb luck. He'd let me go, but that laugh said he wasn't done. The city buzzed around me, dawn creeping in, but I wasn't safe. My van was trashed, my head throbbed, and his mark was everywhere. On the road, in my stuff, in my damn head. I had to get out, but every shadow felt like him, waiting for round two. The cop drove off after taking my statement, leaving me on the bridge with a wrecked van and a splitting headache. I wiped the blood off my face with my sleeve, climbed back in, and sat there, staring at the river. Dawn was breaking, pink streaking the sky, but it didn't feel like a win. That guy knew my name, my van, my every move. He'd turned my home into a target, and I'd let him. I drove slow, head pounding, back to Boise. Figured distance might save me. Portland could keep its bridges and its psychos. The van limped along I-84, dented bumper rattling, and I kept the back close, checking mirrors like a paranoid freak. That smell lingered, even after I chucked the mattress at a rest stop. The note, the glass, the chase, it all screamed I'd screwed up, but how? Back home, I crashed at my sister's place. Jen's got a spare room, no questions asked. Told her the bare minimum. Bad night in Portland, hit a curb. She didn't buy it, but she didn't push. I showered off the grime, patched my forehead, and tried to sleep. Kept seeing his grin, hearing that laugh, like he was in the room. My mistake hit me then. I'd yelled at him, made noise, given him a reason to care. 2 days later, Jen's dog started barking at nothing, middle of the night. I grabbed a kitchen knife, peeked out, saw a flicker near her garage, quick and gone. Told myself it was a trick, just nerves, but my gut knew better. Next morning, Jen found it. A crowbar, rusted, stuck in her back door like a calling card. No note, no stain, just that damn tool. I called the cops, Boise PD this time. Showed him the crowbar, told the whole story. They dusted it, ran it, came back with nothing, no prints, no match. Said it could have been kids, but their eyes said they were grasping. I knew it was him, had to be. He'd followed me 400 miles, or maybe he'd never lost me. That text, closer than you think, wasn't a taunt, it was a promise. Jen begged me to stay, said I was safe with her, but I couldn't risk it. Sold the van for scrap, couldn't even look at it, and rented a cheap apartment downtown, blinds shut tight. Thought I'd outrun him, start over. Then last night, my mailbox had a new letter, no stamp, just my name in jagged scrawl. Inside, a Polaroid of me, sleeping in Jen's spare room, taken from above. I bolted the door, knife under my pillow, but sleep wouldn't come. Portland PD called that morning. Found a body near Kelly Point, half-rotted, crowbar wounds all over. Linked it to a drifter, no ID, same build as my guy. They thought it was over, closed the case. I didn't tell M about the photo, couldn't prove it, couldn't face it. He's still out there, or someone is. My big mistake wasn't parking at the park. It was thinking I could escape a guy who'd made me his game. Jen's safe for now, but me? I'm trapped, waiting for that tap on the window, that sour stink to roll in. Portland was just the start, and this horror's mine to carry. I'm Nora Grayson, 29 years old, and I live in Bend, Oregon. Grew up hiking the high desert, dodging sunburns, and dreaming of something bigger. 2 years ago, I quit my barista gig, cashed out my savings, and bought a Chevy Express, gray, dented, perfect. Turned it into my rolling home. Bunk in the back, solar-powered fridge, a shelf of thrift store novels. Been chasing the open road since, living free, answering to nobody. Last week, I pointed the van toward Portland. Needed a break from Bend's dry heat. Figured I'd soak up some rain and weirdness. I'd heard about this spot near Tryon Creek State Natural Area, quiet, wooded, just south of the city. Sounded like a stealth camper's dream, so I rolled in around sunset, tires crunching on a dirt pullout. The air was damp, trees dripping, and the city's hum felt miles away. I parked facing the creek, killed the engine, and let the quiet sink in. My van's cozy, got a quilt my mom made, a propane stove, even a tiny succulent I named Spike. I've crashed in wilder places, BLM land, coastal cliffs, but Tryon felt tucked away, safe. I cooked some rice and beans, popped a can of soda, and watched the last light fade through the windshield. I'm no stranger to solo nights. locked the doors, slid the curtains shut, and flipped through a dog-eared Stephen King paperback by lantern light. Phone signal was weak, expected that in a park, so I didn't bother checking it. Tryon's got over 600 acres of trails and ferns, a little slice of peace. I'd planned to hike in the morning, maybe snap some pics for my barely followed Instagram. After reading, I stretched out on the bunk, quilt pulled tight. The creek babbled outside, steady and soothing, and I drifted off fast. Been driving all day, so sleep hit like a brick. Woke up later, dead of night, no clue what time, to a sharp tug on the van. Not a rock, not wind, just a yank, like something grabbed the bumper and let go. I blinked, groggy, figuring it was a dream. Sat up slow, ears perked. Nothing but the creek at first, then it came again. Another tug, harder, rocking the whole van. My heart kicked into gear, and I fumbled for my flashlight, the little one I keep by the pillow. Shined it around inside. Everything normal, no leaks, no mess. But that second tug wasn't my imagination. It was real, and it was close. I crept to the back window, peeled the curtain an inch, and peeked out. Dark as hell, just tree shapes and the creek glinting faint. No animals, no people, just stillness. I told myself it was a branch, maybe a critter, but my gut wasn't buying it. I've camped through storms, coyotes howling, never felt this off. Locked the doors again, just to be sure. The air felt heavy, thicker than it should have, and I noticed a whiff of something sharp, like gasoline, but sourer. Not from my stove. I'd shut it off clean. It was outside, faint but creeping in. I clicked off the flashlight, sat back on the bunk, and gripped my multi-tool, dinky blade, but better than nothing. Portland was supposed to be chill, not a horror flick setup. I stayed still, listening, waiting for it to happen again. The creek kept babbling, but that tug, it hung in my mind like a loose thread. Something was out there, messing with me, and I couldn't shake the feeling it was only getting started. I pulled the quilt tighter, eyes on the ceiling, wondering if I'd picked the wrong patch of dirt to call home for the night. I sat there, quilt bunched in my fists, staring into the dark of the van. That tug on the bumper wasn't a one-off. It had intent, like somebody testing me. The sour gasoline smell was stronger now, sneaking through the vents, and my throat itched from it. I flicked my flashlight back on, kept it low, and checked my phone. 1:52 a.m., no bars. Great. Tryon Creek's peace was starting to feel like a trap. The van rocked again, not hard, but enough to slosh my soda can off the counter. I snatched the multi-tool, heart thumping, and crawled to the driver's seat. Shined the light out the windshield. Nothing but trees, shadows, the creek shimmer. No wind tonight. No excuse for that jolt. I've dealt with nosy raccoons before, even a bear once near Bend, but this wasn't claws or paws. This was deliberate. I cracked the window an inch, just to listen. The creek hummed along, but then I caught it. A rustle, sharp and quick, off to my left. Not leaves settling. It was too heavy, too fast. I swung the light over, beam bouncing off trunks, and froze. Something ducked behind a tree, tall, thin, gone in a blink. My stomach knotted up, and I yanked the window shut, locking it tight. Okay, Nora, think. Could have been a hiker, a ranger, somebody lost. But at 2 a.m., in the middle of nowhere? Bullshit. My van's not loud, gray paint, no flashy decals, but it's a target if someone's looking. I slid the keys into the ignition, debating. Started. Roll out, find a hotel lot, or stay put, hope they get bored. I've never bailed on a spot this fast, but that smell was screaming trouble. I leaned back, light off now, and that's when I saw it. A smear on the windshield, inside, right where my breath had fogged it. Greasy, dark, like a thumbprint pressed hard. My chest went tight. I hadn't touched it there, hadn't even leaned close. Someone had been in here, before I locked up, maybe when I was cooking. I wiped it with my sleeve, gagging as the stench hit. Same sour rot, like spoiled meat and fuel mixed. I checked the locks again, every one, and found the back door latch loose. Just a hair, but enough. My blood ran cold. I'd swear I'd secured it, but there it was, wobbling under my fingers. I jammed it shut, heart racing, and grabbed my phone. Battery at 8%, still no signal. I could text Jake, maybe, but what did I say? Hey, dude, some creeps in my van, send help? Fat chance he'd see it. The rustle came again, closer, right outside the passenger side. I held my breath, multi-tool out, blade flipped open. Then a tap. Light, metal on the door. Not a knock, not random. A slow, teasing tick. My skin crawled, and I slid low, peeking through the curtain gap. He was there, hood up, face shadowed, standing still as a statue, maybe 5 feet away. Something glinted in his hand, long and thin. I didn't scream, too scared to even breathe loud. He tapped again, same spot, like he knew I was watching. My brain screamed go, but starting the engine felt like a dare. He'd hear it. No, I was spooked. I stayed frozen, watching him tilt his head, like he was listening back. That smell was choking now, and I realized it wasn't just outside. The smear was spreading, dripping down the glass. He stepped closer, boots silent on the dirt, and raised that glinting thing. A screwdriver, rusted and sharp. He dragged it slow across the door, the screech cutting through me like a knife. I clutched the keys, palms sweaty, and knew I'd waited too long. He wasn't some punk. This guy wanted me rattled, and he was winning. Tryon wasn't peaceful anymore. It was his playground, and I was the toy. That screwdriver scraped my door again, slow and loud, like he was carving his name. I was crouched low, multi-tool shaking in my hand, watching this guy through the curtain slit. He stood there, hoodie shadowing his face, but I caught a flash of teeth, yellow, jagged, grinning. My van rocked as he leaned against it, casual as hell, and that sour stench flooded in, thick enough to taste. This wasn't a prank. This was horror unfolding right outside. I slid to the driver's seat, keys biting into my palm, and risked another look. He'd moved, right up to the windshield now, screwdriver tapping the glass like a metronome. Tick, tick, tick. My heart slammed so hard I thought it'd bust out. I could see him clearer, skinny, pale, eyes like black holes staring straight at me. He knew I was in here, knew I was freaking, and that grin said he loved it. The tapping stopped, and he pressed his face to the glass, nose smushed, breath fogging it up. "Pretty van," he rasped, voice like sandpaper, low enough I barely caught it. My stomach flipped, and I fumbled the keys into the ignition. Engine sputtered. Damn thing always takes a sec, and he laughed, sharp and nasty, stepping back. I floored it, tires spinning dirt, aiming to get the hell out. He didn't chase, just watched me peel off, screwdriver dangling like a trophy. I hit the park road, trees blurring past, and checked the mirror. He was gone, swallowed by the dark. But that smell stayed, and the smear on the windshield was bigger, streaking down like tar. I swerved onto Highway 43, Portland's glow ahead, but my hands wouldn't quit shaking. He'd been inside, had to have, before I'd locked up. I pulled into a gas station near Lake Oswego, neon buzzing, and parked sloppy. My phone was at 5%, signal flickering, so I texted Jake. "Creep and Tryon. Chased me, help." No reply. He's probably snoring in bed. I grabbed my flashlight, checked the van. Back latch was jimmied worse now, bent like he'd pried it. Then I saw it. A wet rag under my bunk, soaked in that rot, dripping onto the floor. My knees buckled. This wasn't random. He'd marked me. A truck rumbled past, and I flinched, scanning the lot. Empty, but my gut screamed he wasn't far. I locked up again, climbed in, and noticed something new. A scratch inside the door, fresh, spelling NORA. My name, gouged right where I'd sleep. The terror hit full force. He knew me, had been close enough to carve that while I was clueless. I started the van, hands numb, needing distance. I drove toward downtown, bridges looming, but the rag's stink was choking me. I chucked it out the window at a stoplight, gagging, and saw that smear on the windshield glisten, moving like it was alive. Then my phone buzzed, screen dim. "You can't wash it off." Unknown number, same as my nightmare. I dropped it, tires squealing as I ran the light. Headlights flared behind me. Low, fast, a beat-up sedan gaining. I glimpsed him in the mirror, same hoodie, same grin, leaning over the wheel. He wasn't hiding now, he was hunting. The city blurred, and I knew something was seriously wrong. He wasn't just a creep. He was a predator, and I'd parked right in his web. I swerved through traffic, horns blaring, but he stuck close, that sedan weaving like it knew my moves. Tryon was behind me, but the horror wasn't. This guy had plans, and I was the star. My van shook, engine screaming, and I realized I wasn't just running from him. I was running from what he'd already done inside my home. I tore through Portland, sedan's headlights burning holes in my mirrors. My van's no race car, topped out at 60, shaking like it might blow, but I pushed it, weaving past late-night delivery vans and drunks. That guy was glued to me, bumper kissing mine, and I caught his grin again, wide and wild. I needed a crowd, cops, anything, so I aimed for the Pearl District. Bright, busy, my best shot. The streets tightened, and I took a corner too fast, scraping a parked car. Sparks flew, but he didn't flinch, just gunned it, ramming my back doors. Metal crunched, and I lurched forward, forehead smacking the wheel. Blood trickled, warm and sticky, but I kept driving, adrenaline screaming. That rag, that scratch, he'd been in my space, and now he wanted me out of it, permanent. I hit Northwest 23rd, swerving through hipster bars still lit up. People scattered, yelling, but I didn't stop, couldn't. He rammed me again, harder, and my rear view showed the doors buckling. I spotted a 24-hour diner ahead, slammed the brakes, and skidded into its lot. Jumped out, multi-tool in hand, legs like jelly, and bolted for the door. He pulled in slow, sedan idling, watching me run. Inside, I yelled at the waitress, some punk chick with pink hair, about a psycho chasing me. She grabbed a phone, dialed 911, while I ducked behind the counter. Through the window, I saw him step out. Tall, bony, screwdriver twirling like a baton. He didn't rush, just strolled toward the diner, tapping it on his leg. My chest heaved. He wasn't scared of witnesses, wasn't scared of anything. The waitress shoved me toward the kitchen, muttering about cops being close. I stumbled past fryers, cooks staring, and peeked out. He was at the door now, pushing it open, that grin locked on me. Sirens wailed, faint but coming, and he froze, head cocked. Then he turned, casual as hell, and walked back to his car. Peeled out just as red and blues flashed down the street. Cops stormed in, two of them, gruff and skeptical. I spilled it all. Try on. The chase, my name scratched inside. They checked the van, doors dented, latch trashed, that smear still dripping. Found the rag on the road, bagged it, but their shrugs said they'd seen worse. Told me to file a report, stay out of parks. I nodded, blood drying on my face, but knew this wasn't over. I drove to a hotel lot off I-5, parked under floodlights, and sat there, shaking. The sedan was gone, but his mark was everywhere, on my van, in my head. I'd escaped, barely, but it felt like a fluke. He'd let me go, like a cat with a mouse, and that grin promised round two. My home was a wreck, my nerves shot, and Portland felt like a cage. I wiped the blood off, checked the scratch, NORA, jagged and deep. My phone buzzed again, dead battery ignored. Sleep tight. I smashed it on the dash, glass cracking, and gripped the multi-tool. Dawn was close, but safety wasn't. He was out there, waiting, and I was running on fumes. The diner's lights faded behind me, but the terror stuck close. I'd fought to live, but every mile felt borrowed. He knew my name, my van, my fear, and he wasn't done playing. I had to get out, but where do you hide from someone who's already inside? Cops left me in that hotel lot, their taillights fading into the gray dawn. I sat there, van trashed, blood crusted on my forehead, staring at the cracked phone. Sleep tight. His words looped, taunting me, and I knew I'd screwed up, not just parking at Tryon, but thinking locks and distance could keep me safe. He'd been in my van, under my nose, and I'd missed it till it was too late. I drove back to Bend that day, van limping along I-26, every rumble making me flinch. Dumped it at a mechanic, doors fixed, stench scrubbed, but I couldn't sleep in it anymore. Crashed at my friend Mia's place, a cramped apartment near Drake Park. Told her I'd hit a deer, skipped the psycho part. She bought it, handed me a beer, and I tried to breathe. Portland felt far, but he didn't. 2 nights later, I woke to Mia shaking me. Someone had smashed her mailbox, left a screwdriver stabbed into the wood. My gut sank. It was him, rusted blade and all. I checked the window, nothing but shadows, but the sour smell hit me, faint, drifting in. He'd followed me, 150 miles, or maybe he'd never left my trail. I'd brought this horror home, and Mia was in it now. Cops came again, different ones, Bend PD, showed him the screwdriver, told the story. They ran it, found prints this time, matched a guy named Dale Voss, parolee from Portland, history of stalking and assaults. Said he'd vanished after a halfway house stint, no address. They'd look, they promised, but their tone said good luck. I knew he wasn't gone, just waiting. I moved again, couch surfing with another buddy, then a motel off Highway 97. Thought I'd outrun him, shake the nightmare. Then yesterday, my old van, sold to some kid in Bend, turned up torched, found in a ditch. Cops called it arson. I called it him. Inside, they found a note, charred but readable. Nora's next. My blood froze. He wasn't just following, he was promising. Me is safe. For now, she moved in with her folks. But me? I'm a ghost, jumping at every creek, sleeping with a knife. Portland PD pinged me today. Voss's sedan got spotted near Tryon, abandoned, rag in the trunk matching mine. They think he's off-grid, maybe dead. I don't buy it. That smell lingers, even here, and last night, my motel window had a fresh scratch. Enore. I messed up, big time, parked in his territory, let him see me, let him know me. Thought van life was freedom, but it's a leash he's holding. I ditched the van, the road, everything, but it's not enough. He's out there, screwdriver ready, and I'm the ending he's writing. Ben's my cage now, and this tragedy's on me. I keep the lights on, door bolted, but sleep's a stranger. Every tap, every whiff of rot. It's him, closing in. Portland was the spark, but I'm the fuel, and he's the fire that won't die. My mistake was thinking I could run. Now I'm just waiting for the inevitable. I'm Alexander Green, 35 years old, living in Seattle, and that night in Portland changed everything. I had just finished a long drive in my trusty van, excited for a brief break from routine, when I pulled off a secluded road near the edge of the city. The air was heavy, and a disturbing chill crept along my spine. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something wasn't right, like an unseen horror lurking behind the trees. Ever felt that uneasy moment when your gut screams, run? I sure did. I remember rolling down the window to breathe in the cool night air as I parked in an old, abandoned lot behind an overgrown park. The van's interior was my sanctuary, yet tonight it felt like a trap. I had heard whispers about this part of Portland, stories of strange happenings and sinister individuals. The scary reputation of the area was well known, and I couldn't help but wonder if I was being drawn into a living nightmare. What would you do if you sensed danger in your own safe space? As I set up a small campfire to ward off the darkness, my thoughts turned to the rumors of a man with bad intentions who had been seen roaming these parts. I couldn't believe that someone so dangerous could lurk so close to where I'd hoped to relax. My van, my refuge on wheels, suddenly seemed vulnerable amidst the looming silhouettes of dead trees and rusting metal. I tried to brush off the anxiety, but the eerie quiet made everything feel unnervingly real and disturbingly imminent. The night had an unsettling calm that felt like the quiet before a storm. I lit a lantern inside the van and began scribbling notes in my journal, trying to process the mix of excitement and dread. Each crinkling page echoed like footsteps in the empty silence outside. I recalled old horror stories that left me both fascinated and terrified, and now, sitting alone, I felt as if I were starring in one of those fairy tales. Isn't it odd how life imitates art, even in the most disturbing ways? Out in the darkness, I noticed a flicker of movement, a shape that seemed to flit between the trees. I paused, heart pounding, as a thought raced through my mind. Was this the notorious bad person they whispered about? My instincts screamed for me to hide, yet a part of me, curious despite itself, forced me to peer out the window. I couldn't tell if it was real or just a trick of the light, but the moment was undeniably scary and charged with potential horror. Have you ever felt a presence watching you when you least expected it? I gathered my thoughts and tried to steady my breathing, questioning if my overactive imagination was playing tricks on me. The contrast between the warm glow of my van and the cold, shadowed night outside made everything seem surreal. I recalled my decision to venture away from Seattle to find some peace in the unknown, but the unsettling silence and vague threats of danger now whispered a more disturbing tale. It was as if fate had steered me towards a confrontation with something truly sinister and malevolent. I decided to take a cautious walk around the van, each step echoing in the vast emptiness. The gravel crunched underfoot, every sound magnified in the quiet of that dark Portland night. I kept glancing over my shoulder, feeling that something was stalking me just out of sight. The sense of horror was palpable, a constant reminder that in this forgotten corner of the city, nothing was as it seemed. Have you ever felt that creeping dread when every shadow seems to hide a secret? As I returned to my van, I recalled a conversation with an old friend who once warned me about trusting the quiet. Sometimes, he said, the silence is the loudest warning of all. Now, with every passing minute, his words echoed in my mind. I felt trapped between my desire for a peaceful escape and the very real possibility that I'd become prey to someone with truly malicious intent. The situation was rapidly escalating into a scenario that was both scary and disturbingly real, a true horror unfolding before my eyes. Back inside the van, I sat on the worn leather seat and tried to calm my racing heart. The dim light from my phone barely illuminated the cramped space, yet it offered a semblance of comfort. I started scribbling down my thoughts, trying to create order out of chaos, but the terror outside refused to be contained. I questioned if my decision to embrace the van life had been a colossal mistake, leaving me vulnerable to an unknown evil that was slowly encroaching on my safe haven. The night was still young, and the creeping tension promised that the real nightmare was only just beginning. I fumbled with my pen as the minutes passed, my mind swirling with memories of past adventures that suddenly felt like distant dreams. Every creak of the van and rustle of the leaves outside made my skin crawl, blending the excitement of exploration with the fear of an impending horror. I thought about the person rumored to be lurking in these parts, a man with bad intentions whose mere presence could shatter lives. That thought sent a shiver down my spine, as I realized that the dangerous unknown was not just a figment of local lore, but a tangible threat I might soon face. The subtle interplay of light and darkness outside my van created an atmosphere that was both mesmerizing and deeply unsettling. I remembered the times when I had confidently set out on solo trips, proud of my independence, only to later recall moments of inexplicable dread. This night in Portland felt like one of those times, but magnified, a real-life horror movie playing out in slow motion. I kept wondering if my gut was right, or if I was simply succumbing to paranoia. Isn't it strange how fear can warp reality into something disturbingly surreal? With every passing minute, the boundary between safety and danger blurred. I could almost feel the weight of unseen eyes observing me from the darkened tree lane. In that moment, I realized how vulnerable I truly was, alone in a city that wasn't my own. The thought of being targeted by someone with ill intentions was not just scary, it was terrifying in its sheer reality. I tried to steady my trembling hands as I scribbled more thoughts in my journal, each line a desperate attempt to make sense of the unfolding horror around me. The wind picked up outside, its eerie whistle cutting through the silence like a warning. I leaned against the cold metal of the van's window, feeling exposed in a way I'd never experienced before. The quiet was so complete, it was as if nature itself was holding its breath, anticipating the next horrifying twist. My mind raced with possibilities, each one more disturbing than the last. Was I about to encounter the very evil that everyone had warned me about, or was it just another figment of my overactive imagination? The line between reality and nightmare was becoming dangerously thin. I sat back down, trying to distract myself by focusing on the little details of my van, the one constant companion on my travels. Every dent and scratch told a story, a reminder of past journeys filled with both joy and sorrow. But tonight, those memories did little to calm the rising panic in my heart. Instead, they seemed to merge with the present danger, creating a cocktail of emotions that left me feeling overwhelmed. I couldn't help but think that this night was turning into one of those unforgettable, horror-filled experiences that you'd recount with a mix of dread and fascination for years to come. Outside, the branches of a large oak tree scraped against the van's metal side, a sound that instantly sent my pulse racing. I told myself it was just the wind, trying to convince myself that there was nothing to fear. Yet, deep down, I knew that the quiet was deceiving. The looming presence of danger, whether real or imagined, was hard to ignore. I forced a laugh at my own paranoia, half mocking the absurdity of the situation, yet fully aware that the sinister possibility was far from absurd. Wasn't it wild how a simple sound could morph into the harbinger of a horror story? I glanced at my phone for the time, noticing that the night was growing deeper and darker. Each minute seemed to stretch endlessly, as if the very fabric of time was conspiring to amplify the terror. I tried to distract myself with memories of happier moments from past van life journeys, but they felt distant now, almost like echoes from another life. The juxtaposition of joy and fear created a disturbing internal conflict. Could I really be facing a real-life nightmare here in Portland, far from my home in Seattle, where every sound and shadow now spoke of danger? The van's engine, silent and inert, suddenly seemed like a lifeline in the vast darkness. I contemplated the possibility of leaving immediately, of driving away into the night to escape this oppressive atmosphere. But deep down, a strange mix of curiosity and defiance held me back. I wanted to see how far this horror would go, how deeply it would affect my van life journey. After all, I had chosen this life for the thrill of the unknown, even if it meant confronting something disturbingly sinister. Can you imagine the thrill of willingly stepping into a situation where every moment is charged with the potential for disaster? My eyes kept darting toward the back door of the van, as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. Every sound, no matter how trivial, took on an ominous significance. I tried to convince myself that it was all just my imagination running wild, yet the persistent feeling of being watched was impossible to ignore. The night in Portland was not just dark. It was filled with an unsettling energy that made even the simplest movement seem laden with danger. Have you ever had a moment when you were sure that someone, or something, was right behind you? As I sat in the dim light, I started to notice details I'd previously overlooked. A shadow moving just beyond the reach of the firelight, a soft rustling that didn't quite match the natural sounds of the night. The subtle signs of an intruder, or perhaps a malevolent force, grew harder to dismiss. I began to feel as though I were trapped in a slowly tightening net, with each minute adding another layer of dread to my van life adventure. The horror of the situation was no longer just a passing thought. It had become an inescapable reality, and I was powerless to stop it. I reached for my journal once more, desperate to document every unsettling moment before it faded into the oppressive darkness. My pen scratched across the paper as I tried to capture the mounting tension, each word a testament to the surreal and disturbing events unfolding around me. The storm of emotions inside me, fear, curiosity, and a grim determination, was a far cry from the peaceful escape I had imagined. The narrative of my van life adventure was rapidly twisting into something far more sinister and horrifying. Isn't it strange how life can suddenly turn into a real-life horror story when you least expect it? The night air grew colder, and the temperature inside the van dropped noticeably, as if the very presence of danger was sapping the warmth from my surroundings. I wrapped myself in a worn blanket and tried to find comfort in its familiar fabric, but even that offered little solace. The thought of someone with bad intentions prowling around sent waves of anxiety through me, each wave more disturbing than the last. I wondered how a single decision, to park here, had spiraled into a scenario straight out of a horror movie. Do you think it's ever possible to truly escape fate, even when every instinct tells you to run? The dim glow of my makeshift campfire danced on the walls of the van, casting eerie, shifting patterns that made everything seem surreal. I sat in silence for a long moment, the kind of silence that speaks volumes about the tension in the air. My mind raced through every horror story I'd ever heard, each one merging with my own experiences into a disturbing tapestry of fear. The idea that this night might be orchestrated by someone with malevolent intent was as terrifying as it was real. Every minute that passed only deepened the sense of impending doom, as if I were being drawn into a web of fate. I leaned back, trying to recall a time when I felt truly safe and free, when the open road promised nothing but endless adventure. But tonight, every memory was tainted by the looming specter of danger. I couldn't shake off the gnawing suspicion that I wasn't alone, that someone was intentionally watching me, plotting something unspeakable. The atmosphere was heavy with the weight of an imminent horror, a reminder that sometimes the scariest nightmares are the ones you live through. Have you ever been caught in a moment when your instincts warned you of a deadly mistake you were about to make? My heart pounded in my chest as I considered my next move, torn between the urge to flee and the need to confront the creeping terror head-on. The van, which had always been a symbol of freedom, now felt like a fragile shield against an enemy I couldn't see. Every fiber of my being screamed that I was on the brink of an encounter with someone truly dangerous, a person whose bad intentions could shatter my life in an instant. The night was filled with ominous signs, each one a disturbing prelude to what might come next. Isn't it wild how fear can turn every simple decision into a life-or-death situation? As I sat there, wrestling with the reality of the situation, I couldn't help but feel that I was teetering on the edge of a horror movie that had come to life. The night in Portland was far from over, and the unsettling events that had unfolded were only the beginning of what promised to be a truly disturbing and dangerous journey. My van, my refuge, now stood as a silent witness to a horror that was slowly creeping in from the shadows. I knew that I had to be ready for whatever came next, because in this twisted reality, nothing was ever truly safe. What do you think? Can you feel the tension building as the night unfolds? I couldn't shake the heavy feeling that something was terribly off as dawn approached in Portland. The unsettling night left me restless and full of questions. My mind replayed every subtle sound and every shadow that moved past my van, making me wonder if the danger was more imminent than I'd initially thought. While I sipped my lukewarm coffee, I began piecing together a series of unsettling events. A missing truck, strange phone calls, and footprints that seemed to circle my parked home on wheels. I questioned if my instincts were warning me about someone who meant real harm. Driving slowly along a narrow street, I tried to escape the lingering dread from that night, but Portland's eerie calm had a way of creeping back in. Every turn felt like it hid a secret, every alley a potential trap. I recalled whispers of a man with bad intentions, a dangerous individual who had left a trail of misfortune in his wake. Despite wanting to leave, a part of me was drawn to understanding the truth behind these disturbing rumors. It wasn't just paranoia. The first signs were here, unmistakable and chilling. While navigating the streets, I couldn't help but notice a series of inexplicable clues scattered around. A half-burned cigarette, but near a parked car, a set of muddy footprints that led to nowhere, and an abandoned cell phone buzzing with a single, cryptic message. The message read, "You can't hide forever," and sent shivers down my spine. I began to realize that I might have unwittingly stepped into a carefully laid trap. Were these hints of someone tracking me, or were they remnants of a past misdeed that I'd somehow stumbled into? My mind raced as I retraced the events of the previous night. I recalled the distant rustle of leaves and that fleeting glimpse of a figure lurking beyond the glow of my campfire. The pieces were starting to connect, a deliberate intrusion, signs of manipulation, and a chilling persistence that suggested this wasn't just random chance. I weighed my options carefully. Should I leave Portland immediately or dig deeper into this unfolding horror? I knew that any decision I made could change everything, and the pressure to act was mounting with every passing minute. Stopping at a small roadside diner to collect my thoughts, I overheard hushed conversations that hinted at the presence of a dangerous man in the area. The patrons exchanged knowing looks, and I sensed that they were all aware of the local menace. Their tone was a mix of fear and resignation, a clear signal that this wasn't an isolated incident. The realization struck me hard. The threat was not just a figment of my imagination. It was real, and it was closing in. I couldn't help but wonder if I was now part of a larger, more sinister narrative. As I left the diner and resumed my journey, I felt a growing urgency to protect myself and my van, my only sanctuary in this foreign city. Every decision from that night now carried a weight of impending doom. I started questioning every move, every whispered word on the wind. The realization that someone might be deliberately orchestrating these events was both terrifying and disturbingly tangible. In moments of introspection, I recalled practical steps I had once read about for avoiding danger in unfamiliar territories, but nothing could prepare me for the raw, scary reality of facing an adversary who thrived on chaos. I found a quiet overlook where I could pause and reflect on the night's events. From that vantage point, Portland's city lights looked muted and distant, overshadowed by the looming threat I could feel in every dark corner. I sat there, the cool breeze brushing against my face, and began to document every detail in my journal. Each scribbled note a desperate attempt to make sense of the horror creeping into my life. Was this a case of mistaken fate, Or had I become a target of someone who thrived on inflicting terror? The questions echoed in my mind as I pondered the gravity of my situation. In the solitude of that high perch, I replayed the unnerving incidents and the series of small but deliberate warnings. The once comforting routine of van life was now tainted with anxiety and suspicion. I recognized that every decision moving forward would either deepen my entanglement in this nightmare or provide a narrow window for escape. The weight of responsibility pressed upon me as I realized that my next actions could either avert disaster or inadvertently push me closer to the edge. I wondered if I had the strength to confront a horror that wasn't just imagined but orchestrated by a man with unspeakably bad intentions. As dusk approached once again, the oppressive atmosphere returned, and I knew that the stakes were higher than ever. The signs of intrusion were unmistakable now. Every creak, every whisper of the wind seemed to be a coded message meant just for me. My van, once a symbol of freedom and adventure, now felt like a fragile barrier between life and a terrifying unknown. With resolve hardening inside me, I prepared for the inevitable confrontation, knowing that the terrifying truth was about to unravel even further. Would I find a way to outsmart this relentless threat, or was I destined to be ensnared by the horror of my own choices? I awoke to a thick, unsettling fog that seemed to swallow up the familiar streets of Portland. As I stepped out of my van, the morning light struggled to penetrate the heavy mist, casting everything in a ghostly pallor. I sensed, with a jolt of raw fear, that the danger from the night before had materialized into something far more sinister. A rough whisper in the air hinted that the bad man I had feared was now actively watching, stalking my every move. The sensation was as disturbing as it was real, a horror that no one could easily dismiss. The uneasy silence of the foggy morning was abruptly broken by the sound of crunching gravel behind me. I spun around, heart hammering, to see a dark silhouette emerging slowly from the mist. His deliberate, measured steps confirmed my worst suspicions. This was no mere passerby, but the very threat I had been warned about. I tried to remain calm as I locked my van and retreated inside, the adrenaline fueling my every thought. It was the moment when I realized that the terror was no longer distant, but had now taken a physical, terrifying form. Every instinct in my body screamed that I was being hunted. I remembered the fragmented conversations from the diner and the cryptic signs left behind. Now they all converged into a horrifying reality. The man's presence was not subtle. He moved with a deliberate coldness that sent chills down my spine. I could almost hear his malevolent thoughts as I crouched behind the van, contemplating my next move. In that moment, I questioned if survival would depend on outsmarting a predator who relished the idea of my fear. It was a scary, disturbing prospect that left me reeling. The fog provided him with a ghostly cover as he circled the van, his eyes locked on every movement I made. I could feel the weight of his stare as if it were a physical force, a predatory intensity that magnified every fear within me. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone, only to find it dead, a stark reminder that even modern conveniences could fail in the grip of terror. Every decision from that point was a life or death gamble, as I weighed the practicality of staying hidden against the urge to confront the looming horror outside my fragile refuge. My mind raced through possible strategies while I sat huddled in the dark, heart pounding like a drum. I recalled advice from survival guides and the warnings of those who had once faced similar dangers. Each thought was punctuated by the occasional, deliberate snap of a twig or the rustle of dry leaves, small but potent reminders that the threat was close. I knew I needed to muster every ounce of courage to plan my escape or to confront the danger head-on. The terror that had seeped into my soul was now as tangible as the cold sweat on my brow, each moment intensifying the grip of the horror. As the minutes ticked by, the ominous presence began to manifest in more disturbing ways. A car engine roared to life in the distance, its headlights cutting through the fog like a blade, and I realized that I wasn't alone in this unfolding nightmare. There were others, victims, or perhaps accomplices, caught in the web of this menacing plan. The bad man's influence seemed to stretch out, corrupting the very atmosphere around me. I wondered if his intention was to isolate me completely, to trap me in this deadly dance of terror. Every sound, every shadow now carried a hint of malicious intent. In a moment of desperate clarity, I decided that running was no longer an option. I recalled the lessons of my van life journeys, how quick thinking and calm resolve had saved me in precarious situations before. With a mixture of dread and determination, I began planning a countermove that might just throw this horror off balance. I studied the environment outside, noting every possible escape route and every hiding spot. The practicality of my plan was interwoven with a creeping realization that this wasn't just a random act of violence. It was a meticulously planned assault, designed to evoke maximum terror and chaos. The tension was palpable as I stealthily opened the van's back door to survey the immediate surroundings. The fog, which had once provided cover, now seemed to amplify the eerie silence and the weight of impending doom. I could see fleeting movements at the edge of my vision, quick, calculated gestures that hinted at someone setting up an ambush. The dreadful truth was impossible to ignore. I was now locked in a confrontation with someone who was driven by a cold, deliberate malice. Every breath felt like a countdown to the next horrifying moment, leaving me to wonder how long I could hold out before the terror fully broke through. With the rising sun barely illuminating the twisted outlines of the urban decay around me, I knew that there was no turning back. The horror had escalated beyond the whispers of urban legends into a living nightmare that I was forced to endure. I steadied my trembling hands and resolved to take action, even as every instinct screamed for me to hide. My thoughts swirled with the grim realization that this encounter was only the beginning of a horrifying ordeal that would test every limit of my survival instincts. In that charged moment, I couldn't help but ask myself, could I really escape this carefully crafted trap, or was I destined to be swallowed by the darkness? The realization that staying put was no longer an option hit me like a bolt of lightning. I bolted from the van with nothing but a backpack and my scattered wits, heart pounding as I navigated the twisted streets of Portland. Every step was a desperate scramble to put distance between me and the sinister figure who had haunted the fog. The adrenaline surged through me, fueling each rapid decision as I darted between shadowy alleys and dimly lit sidewalks. The thought of confronting that malevolent presence directly was too scary to even imagine. I had to escape, no matter the cost. The urban maze of Portland was both a blessing and a curse in that frantic moment. I ducked into a narrow side street, my eyes constantly scanning for any sign of pursuit. The chilling sounds of hurried footsteps and distant shouts echoed around me, each one intensifying the life or death urgency of my situation. I recalled my past van life escapades, where quick thinking had saved me from unexpected dangers, but nothing had prepared me for the sheer terror of being hunted. Every twist of the road felt like a gamble, each decision a razor's edge between freedom and capture. In my frantic escape, I stumbled upon a derelict building that offered a temporary refuge. The interior was dim, its crumbling walls and scattered debris mirroring the chaos of my thoughts. I pressed myself against a cold, rough wall, trying to catch my breath while listening intently for any sign that my pursuer was close. The silence was only punctuated by my ragged breathing and the distant rumble of a car engine. I realized that this hideout, though far from perfect, might just give me the crucial seconds needed to plan my next move. Was it possible that the horror would relent, or was I now ensnared in a relentless chase? Time blurred as I navigated the abandoned corridors, every sound a potential harbinger of doom. The building's eerie atmosphere made it feel like a labyrinth of forgotten memories, each room echoing with whispers of past tragedies. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, a constant reminder that my life was now a fragile thread. In those terrifying minutes, every instinct screamed at me to run, yet a stubborn determination held me in place. I began scanning for anything useful, a tool, a weapon, or even a clue about who might be orchestrating this dreadful pursuit. The tension was as thick as the dust swirling in the shafts of weak light. When I finally dared to step back into the murky outdoors, the chill of early evening had set in, and Portland's streets took on an even more sinister look. Every corner, every darkened doorway, was fraught with danger. I moved cautiously, making my way toward a known safe haven, a small motel on the outskirts of the city that had once been recommended to me by a fellow traveler. The decision to head there was driven by a blend of desperation and the slim hope of finding a temporary shield from the terror that stalked me. Each step felt laden with the weight of potential discovery, and every rustle in the dark sent my nerves into overdrive. My escape route twisted through narrow alleys and overgrown paths, the urban chaos of Portland becoming a battleground of survival. I could still feel the ominous presence lurking behind, the sound of deliberate, heavy footsteps echoing my own. The cityscape transformed into a maze where every illuminated window or abandoned lot could hide the face of my pursuer. In those moments, I found myself questioning whether the van, the symbol of my freedom, was now a distant memory, sacrificed in a desperate bid to outrun the horror that had invaded my life. The fear was overwhelming, yet a steely resolve began to take shape inside me. As I navigated a narrow bridge spanning a murky river, the scene around me was both haunting and surreal. The water below moved sluggishly under the feeble glow of streetlights, mirroring the slow but steady approach of the danger behind me. I paused briefly on the bridge, listening to the water's soft lapping and the far-off murmur of voices that might have been either warnings or traps. The adrenaline was coursing through my veins, each heartbeat a reminder that every second was a battle against time. The thought of being cornered, of becoming another victim in this real-life horror, pushed me forward with a desperate energy. With the motel in sight, hope mingled with dread as I quickened my pace. Every step was punctuated by the lingering echo of my pursuer's presence, a constant, unnerving reminder that I wasn't alone. I dashed across an empty parking lot, the headlights of a distant vehicle briefly illuminating the darkened horizon. In that fleeting moment, I felt a spark of optimism that perhaps I could outrun this nightmare. Yet, beneath that hope was a terrifying certainty. The horror was still hunting me, and the person behind it was relentless in his pursuit. I clutched my bag tightly, knowing that survival depended on every split-second decision I made. Finally reaching the motel's creaking entrance, I fumbled with the door as if it were a lifeline. Inside, the dim lobby offered a temporary sanctuary from the relentless chase outside. I sank into a threadbare chair, the adrenaline slowly subsiding as I listened for any signs of pursuit. The echoes of my rapid escape still haunted me, and I couldn't help but feel that the horror was biding its time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. In that tense, quiet space, I wondered if this temporary relief was just another interlude in a long, frightening symphony of terror. My thoughts were filled with the desperate need to regroup, to plan the next move in a battle where every moment could be my last. The false sense of security I found in the motel was shattered in an instant when the door burst open with a violent crash. I barely had time to react as the familiar, malevolent face of the man with bad intentions loomed in the doorway. His eyes, cold and calculating, sent a surge of terror through me that was almost paralyzing. In that moment, the stakes of my van life nightmare reached an unimaginable peak. Every survival instinct screamed at me to fight back, to run, but I was frozen by the realization that my life had become a stage for a tragedy I could neither predict nor control. The ensuing struggle was as swift as it was brutal. I bolted upright, trying desperately to escape, but he was relentless, each movement calculated to corner me in this claustrophobic nightmare. The chaos of our confrontation blurred together, the clash of desperate words, the clatter of overturned furniture, and the haunting echo of my own terrified heartbeat. I could feel the overwhelming presence of evil closing in, as though this encounter had been meticulously planned to mark the end of my freedom. The horror was raw, the danger unmistakable, and every second felt like a descent into a deeper abyss of terror. As I scrambled to break free, the grim reality set in that I might have made a deadly mistake by ever venturing into this cursed part of Portland. The weight of my van life decisions, of chasing the thrill of the unknown, came crashing down on me in a series of sharp, excruciating moments. Each move was a battle against the palpable darkness that emanated from my assailant. The struggle for survival became a desperate dance of adrenaline and fear, every fleeting second laden with the risk of a fatal misstep. I couldn't help but think about the choices that had led me to this very moment, a moment where one wrong move could seal my fate forever. In a desperate bid for escape, I managed to knock over a heavy lamp, the crash providing me with a brief window of opportunity to slip past him. My heart pounded like a war drum as I raced down the narrow corridor of the motel, each footstep echoing with the weight of impending tragedy. The corridors twisted and turned, mirroring the labyrinthine nature of my thoughts. I could hear his heavy steps in hot pursuit, his voice a low, mocking taunt that confirmed I was not yet free from his clutches. The terrifying realization struck me hard. The horror was not confined to a single moment. It was an endless nightmare, a relentless cycle of fear. Burst through a side exit into the cold, dark night, I fled into the maze of Portland's deserted streets. The city's familiar landmarks now felt alien, twisted by the terror of my experience. Every shadow seemed to harbor danger. Every gust of wind whispered of impending doom. I ran until exhaustion threatened to overtake me, my only thought being to escape the grip of that relentless horror. Along the way, I recalled fragments of advice from old friends and survival guides, though nothing could prepare me for the raw intensity of this life-or-death situation. The terror was unyielding, a constant companion that would not let go. My flight led me to a hidden corner of an industrial area where abandoned warehouses loomed like silent witnesses to my ordeal. There, in the bitter cold, I paused to catch my breath and assess the situation with trembling hands. The adrenaline still surged, mingling with a deep, painful sorrow for the mistakes that had brought me here. I wondered if, in a cruel twist of fate, the van life I had cherished for its freedom was now a prison of my own making, a trap set by my own reckless decisions. The horror of being hunted by someone with such malevolent intent left me questioning if there was any escape from this nightmare. In that bleak solitude, I began to piece together the remnants of my shattered confidence. Every encounter, every decision, played back in my mind like a series of tragic flashbacks. I knew I had to make a choice, to either confront the terror once more or to surrender to the overwhelming dread that threatened to engulf me. The weight of the tragedy was profound, a stark reminder that sometimes the very pursuit of freedom could lead to irreversible consequences. I took a deep, shuddering breath, accepting that I was now caught in the grip of a horror too real to ignore. Summoning every ounce of remaining courage, I decided that I couldn't let this malevolent force win. With a mix of desperation and determination, I searched for a safe route out of the industrial maze. Every step felt like a battle against the persistent darkness, the terror urging me to look back even as I pressed forward. I recalled the painful lessons of survival, lessons learned through hardship and the bitter sting of loss, and used them to guide my way. Even as fear clawed at me from every side, I clung to a stubborn hope that this nightmare might eventually end, that I could reclaim the van life I once knew. As I finally emerged onto a busy street with the faint promise of safety in the hustle of Portland's daytime routine, the horrors of the night still lingered like a dark stain on my soul. The weight of the tragedy, the deadly mistake that had led to this harrowing encounter, pressed down on me with a force I could hardly bear. My van, once a symbol of unbridled freedom and adventure, now represented the choices that had brought about this terrifying ordeal. Standing in the light of a new day, I realized that the scars of this horror would never truly fade. The memory of that relentless, bad-intentioned man, and the night when terror became reality, would haunt me for the rest of my life. In that painful moment of clarity, I knew that every step forward was a battle to reclaim my life from the grip of an unyielding, devastating nightmare.